A fist hammered against a wooden door. 3 hard blows. The wind shoved at the cabin walls hard enough to rattle the lamps. Inside, a man froze with a kettle in his hand. His other hand went straight to the rifle by the stove. Another knock came, softer this time, almost a question. He moved slow. He pulled the door open 6 inches, rifle ready. A woman stood in the snow, black hair frozen at the edges. A long deerskin coat caked white. She held a small bundle pressed tight against her chest. The man holding the rifle was a rancher named Ezra Hollis. He had not opened that door for anyone in 2 years. Her lips were cracked and purple from the cold. Then she spoke. 3 words. I need shelter. What he did in the next 30 seconds would change every Christmas he had left. Stay with me. Ezra opened the door wider. Just a few more inches. He kept the rifle low but ready. The wind threw snow into his kitchen and sent the fire hissing. You alone? He asked. She nodded. Step inside. Slow. She stepped in. Snow fell off her coat in sheets. Ezra closed the door behind her and threw the iron bolt. He kept his back to the wall. He kept the rifle in his hand. He had lived in this cabin for 14 years. He had buried his wife 2 summers ago, right out by the wash where she liked to read in the evenings. After that, nobody came up to the place anymore. He didn't go down to the town much either. He ran a few head of cattle. He chopped wood. He cooked 1 meal a day, ate it by himself, and went to bed before the stars were full out. So having a woman standing in his kitchen at all was strange enough. Having an Apache woman standing in his kitchen on Christmas Eve was something else entirely. Now here's the thing. Out in that part of the territory, in those years, you didn't have to be guilty of anything for white riders to put a rope around your neck. All you had to do was be the wrong color in the wrong cabin. Ezra knew it. She knew it. The bolt on the door wasn't really protecting her from the cold. It was protecting both of them from the world. Sit down, he said. She lowered herself onto the bench by the stove. The bundle in her arms didn't move. She kept it close. What's in there? He asked. She looked at him a long second. Then she pulled the cloth back. It wasn't a child. It was a folded blanket, a small knife, a piece of dried meat, and a rolled-up paper. That was everything she owned. Ezra felt something in his chest loosen. Just a little. You hungry? She nodded. He set the rifle across the table within easy reach. He turned to the stove. There was a pot of beans from that morning. He warmed it up. He cut a piece of cornbread, slathered it with butter, and set it down in front of her along with a tin cup of coffee. She ate slowly, like she didn't want to seem desperate, but her hands shook on the spoon. What's your name? He asked. Nalia. He repeated it under his breath. Nalia. And you? Ezra Hollis. She nodded once, like it was a name she was trying to remember. How'd you find this place? He asked. I followed the wash for 2 days. I saw smoke. 2 days. In that storm. Ezra looked at her hands. Her fingers were red and stiff. Take off the coat, he said. You'll never warm up in a wet coat. She hesitated. Then she did. Underneath, she wore a thin deerskin dress and moccasins that had walked too far. Her wrist had a long cut across it, half scabbed over, half still raw. He saw it but didn't mention it. He poured hot water into a basin and set it on the floor by her feet. Put your feet in. Slow. It'll hurt before it helps. She did. She winced. Her eyes watered. She didn't make a sound. Believe me, Ezra had seen some hard people in his life. Cattlemen. Soldiers. Drunks who'd been thrown off horses and just got back on. But the way this woman swallowed pain without showing it, that was something else. Why are you here, Nalia? She looked into the fire. Men are looking for me, she said. Apache men? White men. And one Apache man. They are not the same kind of looking, but they want the same thing. Ezra was quiet for a long moment. They going to find you here? Maybe. He set down his coffee. He stared at the door. He stared at the rifle. Then he stared at her. He could throw her out. He could tell her to keep moving in the morning. He could pretend he never saw her. He could do what every other man in the territory would tell him to do. Instead, he stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out a wool blanket that had belonged to his wife. He brought it back and laid it across her shoulders. "You sleep by the fire tonight," he said. "Nobody knocks on this door without me hearing them first." She looked up at him. Her eyes were dark and tired and trying not to show gratitude. "Why?" she asked. He thought about it. Then he gave the only honest answer he had. "Because it's Christmas Eve. And because nobody should die in the snow." Morning came hard. The sky was gray. The wind had stopped. The world outside was that kind of bright white that hurts your eyes if you stare at it too long. Ezra was up before the light. He didn't sleep much. He sat at the table with the rifle across his knees and watched the woman by the fire. She slept on her side, the wool blanket pulled to her chin, the small knife from her bundle tucked under her hand. Even asleep, she was ready. Around 8 o'clock, he heard the horses. He stood up fast. For riders coming up the drive. He could hear their hooves on the frozen ground from a half-mile away. He moved to the window and looked through the slats. He recognized the lead rider, Sheriff Garrett Doyle. Big man, gray beard, Union Army coat that hadn't fit him in 10 years. Behind Doyle were 2 cattle hands from the valley and a 4th rider Ezra didn't know. A younger man, clean-shaven, sat his horse straighter than the others. Officer's posture. Ezra crossed to the fire in 3 steps. "Nalia, up." She was up before he finished saying it. "Riders. 4 of them. Get under the floor in the back room. There's a hatch under the rug. You'll fit. Don't make a sound." She didn't ask questions. She rolled the blanket tight, grabbed her bundle, and went. Ezra heard the hatch open and close. He kicked the rug back over it. He took the bench she'd been sitting on and moved it to a different corner. He poured her tin cup of coffee into his and put hers away. Then he opened the door before they could knock. "Doyle." "Ezra." The sheriff swung down off his horse. The cold made his breath fog white. "Sorry to come up here Christmas morning. What's the trouble? You hear about the Reagan place?" "No. 2 nights ago. Burned to the ground. Whole family killed. Couple of horses and cattle taken. Lord. Apaches did it. Or one of them did. We've been running her trail for 2 days. She came up this way." Ezra didn't move his face. "Her? Squaw. Young. Took off into the storm. We lost her tracks at the wash." The young, clean-shaven rider hadn't dismounted. He sat looking down at Ezra from his horse. His eyes were not warm. "Mr. Hollis," he said, "have you seen any Indians in the last 2 days?" "No." "You sure about that?" "I haven't seen anyone in 2 days. Storm was too bad to ride. I been here. You don't mind if we look around your place?" Ezra glanced at the sheriff. Doyle gave a small apologetic shrug, like a man who'd been overruled. "This is Lieutenant Crane," Doyle said, "out of the army post at Camp Verde. He's leading the search." Ezra nodded slow. "Help yourself." The 2 cattle hands stayed mounted at the gate. Doyle and Crane came inside. Crane went first. He moved like a man who'd searched houses before. He looked into the bedroom. He looked into the back room. He stopped at the rug. He stood on it for what felt like a long time. He stepped off it. He kept walking. He looked into the loft. He came back down. He looked at the kitchen. He looked at Ezra. 2 cups, he said. Ezra didn't blink. "I drink 2 cups in the morning." Crane picked up the cup that had been Nalia's. He turned it in his hand. He set it down. "Cornbread crumbs by the bench," Crane said. "I had cornbread last night." Crane nodded slowly. He didn't believe him. Ezra could see it in the man's face. But he had no proof. So he said nothing more. Doyle clapped Ezra on the shoulder. "Sorry, Hollis. You see anything, you ride to town. Here, I will. Crane lingered by the door. Mr. Hollis, if you're hiding her, you understand the law. I do. It's not just the law. It's a rope. For both of you. I understand. Crane looked at him for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked out. Ezra stood at the door and watched the four of them ride back down the drive. He didn't move until they disappeared into the white. Even then, he counted to 100 before he closed the door. He bolted it. He walked back to the rug. He pulled it back. He opened the hatch. You can come out. She climbed up. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking again, but not from the cold this time. They didn't see me? They didn't see you. She sat down on the bench. She breathed out slow. Her shoulders dropped about 2 inches. For the first time since she had walked in his door, she looked tired in the ordinary way. Not the running way. Ezra sat down across from her. He poured them both fresh coffee. He cut 2 slices of bread. He pushed one across the table. She didn't pick it up at first. She looked at him. You lied for me. I did. Why? He thought about it. You didn't kill those people, did you, Nalia? She shook her head. Slow. I saw who did. He waited. It was him, she said. The young one. The lieutenant. Crane. Ezra felt his stomach drop. He killed the Reagans? He brought 3 men. White men. They wore Apache war paint. They burned the family, took the horses, and left a knife with my brother's mark on it. My brother is dead 3 months. He took the knife from his body when the army hung him. Why? For the land. The Reagans had cattle land. The army wanted it cleared. He gave them a reason. And you saw. I was hunting. I saw his face under the paint. He saw me. Now he hunts me. Ezra looked down at his coffee for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and pushed the bread toward her again. Eat, he said. We're safe for now. She picked it up. She took a bite. She closed her eyes. The fire crackled. The kettle hissed. Outside, the wind had finally died. For a little while, it really did feel like Christmas morning. Quiet, calm. 2 people at a table sharing bread, the worst of it behind them, or so they thought. The hoofbeats came back at noon. Just 1 horse this time. Ezra was at the woodpile when he heard it. He dropped the axe. He ran for the cabin door, kicked snow off his boots, and pulled it shut behind him as he came in. Hatch! Now! Nalia was already moving. She was in the floor before he finished bolting the door. Through the window slats, Ezra watched the rider come up the drive. Lieutenant Crane. Alone. He rode like a man who'd come back to finish something. He stopped at the porch. He didn't dismount. Mr. Hollis. Come out. Ezra stood inside the door. He picked up the rifle. He didn't open the door. Mr. Hollis. I know you can hear me. I hear you. Come out and we can talk like men. I can hear you fine through the door. Crane laughed once. It was not a friendly sound. All right, we'll do it your way. There was a long silence. Then Crane spoke again, quieter. I know she's in there. The cup, the crumbs. The rug doesn't sit flat. You moved a bench. 3 things, Hollis. A man living alone wouldn't get any of them wrong. Ezra's grip on the rifle tightened. I'm going to make this simple for you, Hollis. I'm going to ride back to Camp Verde. I'm going to come back tomorrow morning at first light. With 6 men. We will burn this cabin to its stones if I have to. Or, pause. Or you bring her out right now. Nobody has to know you hid her. I'll put it down as you found her tracks and held her for me. You'll get a reward. $200. You walk away. She hangs for what her people did. Ezra closed his eyes. Just for a second. What if I told you I know what you did at the Reagan place? The silence on the other side of the door was long. Long enough that Ezra knew his guess was right. When Crane spoke again, his voice was very calm. Then you'd be a dead man, Hollis. And so would she. Tomorrow at first light. Ezra heard the horse turn. He heard it walk down the drive. He stood at the door until the hoofbeats faded into the white. Then he sat down on the bench. He put his face in his hands. "You can come up," he said. Nalia came up out of the floor. She didn't say anything. She came over and sat down beside him. "You heard?" he asked. "I heard. He's going to come back." "Yes." "With 6 men." "Yes." She put her hand on his arm. Just for a second. Then she pulled it back. "Ezra, you let me go tonight. You ride to town tomorrow morning. You tell them I came, you turned me away, I went south. They will not know. You will live." He looked at her. "And you?" "I will keep moving. I am used to it. You'll freeze. Maybe. Maybe not." He shook his head slow. "No. Ezra." "I said no." He stood up. He walked over to the gun rack on the wall. He took down a second rifle. He took down a pistol. He took down a box of cartridges and set it on the table. "I'm not letting them hang you for what I just heard him say. You're a witness. He came back here because he can't risk you ever being in front of a judge. And if he kills you, he kills me because I heard it too. We are in the same fight now." She looked at him a long time. "You don't know me, Ezra Hollis. I know enough. You will die for a woman you met yesterday. I will die for the truth. And right now you are the only piece of it standing in the territory. Now this is the part where I want you to listen close. If you've made it this far in the story, do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button. Costs you nothing, and it tells me you want more stories like this one. Then come right back. We are not done. Not by a long way." Nalia stood up. She walked to the table. She picked up the second rifle. She checked the action like someone who had done it before. "You know how to use that?" Ezra asked. "My brother taught me." "All right." He looked out the window. The sun was already low. Maybe 4 hours of light left. If they come at first light, they'll be on the ridge by 4 in the morning. They'll come down the drive together. 6 men in a line. I want them broken up before they get within 50 yards of this cabin. "How?" He looked at her. "You ever set a trip wire?" She almost smiled. "My grandfather taught me." So they spent the rest of the daylight working. Ezra knew his land. He knew where the drive narrowed between 2 rocks. He knew where the irrigation ditch ran, and where it could be filled with brush and snow to hide a man. He knew which fence post was loose, and how, with one tug from a rope, it could be pulled across the path to spook a horse. Nalia worked beside him. She worked like a woman who had done a lot of quiet things in her life. She didn't complain. She didn't ask twice. When he handed her a coil of wire, she ran it through her fingers once, judged the strength, and went to work. By the time the sun went down, they had 3 trip lines, a covered ditch with a man-sized hide, and a brush blind on the ridge above the cabin. They had moved every piece of furniture in the cabin so the windows could be defended from inside. They had 2 rifles loaded, the pistol on the table, and a knife on the bench. They sat down at the table together for the second night. Outside, the snow had started again. He came at first light, just like he said, but not the way Ezra expected. Ezra had been awake all night. So had Nalia. They'd taken turns at the window. Around 3 in the morning he climbed up to the ridge blind he'd built and waited there. Nalia stayed in the cabin with the second rifle. By 4:30, the eastern sky was pale gray. By 5, Ezra heard the horses. He counted them. 1, 2, 3. That was it. 3. His stomach tightened. Crane had said 6. Crane had brought 3. That meant the other 3 were somewhere else. Coming around. Coming through the wash. Coming on foot. Ezra cupped his hands and called down to the cabin in a low whistle, the kind of bird call he'd worked out with Nalia the night before. 2 short, 1 long. It meant he split them. Stay sharp. A whistle came back from the cabin. She'd heard. The 3 riders came down the drive in single file. Crane in front. 2 men behind him in dark wool coats. They rode slow. They had rifles across their saddles. They were not pretending to be a posse anymore. They were a kill squad. They hit the first trip line at 35 yards out. The wire caught the lead horse just below the chest. The horse screamed and went down. Crane jumped clear, rolled, came up on his feet with his pistol out. The second rider's horse spooked sideways and threw him into a fence post. The third pulled up hard. That was Ezra's signal. He fired from the ridge. The third rider went off his horse before he heard the shot. Crane and the second rider scattered. They ran for the irrigation ditch, the one Ezra had counted on, which was exactly the wrong choice. The second rider hit the covered hide and dropped right through it into the ditch. He didn't come back up. Crane ran past it. He made it to the side of the cabin. He pressed himself against the wall. That left Crane and 3 more men coming through the wash. Ezra was halfway down the ridge when he saw them. 3 figures in army wool, on foot, rifles up, moving fast through the cottonwoods on the south side of the cabin. Ezra fired again. He hit one in the leg. The man went down screaming. The other 2 scattered into the trees. Ezra had to choose. Cabin or wash? Nalia or the flankers? He chose the cabin. He came down the ridge fast, slipping in the snow, the rifle in his hand. He made it to the cabin's blind side and pressed against the same wall Crane was against. But on the opposite corner, he could hear Crane breathing. About 15 feet away around the wall. Inside the cabin, glass broke. A shot. Then another. Nalia was firing. A man's voice cried out and went silent. Then another shot. From inside. Then nothing. Ezra's heart pounded hard. He stepped around the corner. Crane was gone. The window he'd come through had glass spilled all over the snow. Ezra ran for the door. He kicked it open. Inside the cabin, on the kitchen floor, was one of the flanker men, dead. Nalia was on the floor against the far wall, holding her side. Blood between her fingers. Crane was standing over her with his pistol pointed at her head. He turned at the sound of the door. His pistol came around. Ezra fired first. The bullet caught Crane in the chest. The lieutenant staggered back 2 steps. He hit the kitchen table and slid down it to the floor. He looked at Ezra with something like surprise. He tried to lift the pistol again. Ezra took 2 steps forward and kicked it out of his hand. Crane coughed. Blood came up. "You don't know," he wheezed. "What you just did. I know exactly what I just did. They'll come back. They'll come back for both of you. The army will hear. The army will hear you died chasing the wrong woman. And the witness who said so will be a white rancher with a dead lieutenant on his floor and a story that holds together. You're going to be the criminal in this, Crane. Not her." Crane laughed, turned into a cough. The cough turned into nothing. He was gone. Ezra didn't watch him die. He was already on his knees beside Nalia. "Show me. Show me where." She moved her hand. The bullet had gone through her side just under the ribs. It had come out the back. He could see both holes. The wound was bleeding hard but not pumping. She'd been lucky. "Stay with me, Nalia. Stay with me. There are still 2 of them," she said. "In the trees." "I know. You have to." "I know." He got up. He grabbed his rifle. He went to the broken window. The 2 flanker men were already retreating. He could see them through the cottonwoods, pulling their wounded friend with them, heading for the wash. They had a horse waiting somewhere on the far side. They had seen Crane go down through the window. They had seen the man on the floor. They had seen enough. They were running. Ezra didn't fire after them. He let them go. He needed them to live. He needed them to ride back to Camp Verde and tell the story their way. That Lieutenant Crane had ridden out to arrest a fugitive Apache woman, that she had been hidden by a white settler, that there had been a fight, and that Crane had died in it. They would tell the army that. They would not mention that Crane had brought 6 armed men to kill a witness. They would never admit to that, because that was a hanging matter for them too. The lie would work both ways. Ezra dropped the rifle on the bench. He went back to Nalia. He pulled the wool blanket off the floor and pressed it hard against her side. "Hold this. Press hard. I'm going to boil water." She held the blanket. She looked up at him. Her eyes were losing focus from the blood loss. "Ezra, don't talk. You did this for me. Don't talk." "Why?" He stopped. He looked at her. "Because somewhere between yesterday and right now you stopped being a stranger. That's all I know." He went to the stove. Took her 3 weeks to walk again. Ezra cleaned the wound twice a day with hot water and whiskey. He boiled cloth. He stitched the holes himself with a sewing needle and thread he'd taken from his wife's old basket. Nalia didn't make a sound through any of it. She lay on the bed in the back room, his bed, and let him work. The day after the shooting, 2 soldiers from Camp Verde rode up. Ezra met them on the porch. He told them what he wanted them to know. Lieutenant Crane had come to his cabin chasing a fugitive. There had been a fight. The lieutenant had died. The fugitive had escaped south. Ezra had wounded one of her companions but had been unable to give chase. The soldiers looked at the body of Lieutenant Crane on a board behind the cabin. They looked at the broken window. They looked at the dead man on the kitchen floor. They wrote it all down. They asked Ezra to come into Camp Verde to make a formal statement. He went the next day. He told the same story. He signed it. The army accepted it. Nobody ever came back to ask again. The 2 flanker men never told the truth. Ezra had been right about that. To admit Crane's plan would have been to admit their own part in the Reagan killings. They kept their mouths shut. The army filed Crane's death as line of duty. Nalia stayed. Not because she had to. Because the wound healed slow and the snow stayed deep and there was nowhere safe for her to go yet. That was what they told each other, anyway. January went. February went. By March, she could walk without holding the wall. In April, the snow melted off the south slope of the ranch. Nalia went outside one morning without her coat for the first time. She stood by the wash where Ezra's wife was buried and looked at the new grass. Ezra watched her from the porch. He went down. He stood beside her. "My wife liked this spot," he said. "I know. I can feel it. She'd have liked you." Nalia looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because she liked anyone who was honest. And anyone who wasn't afraid of hard things." Nalia was quiet for a moment. "You think I should leave," she said. "Don't you?" He didn't answer right away. "I think you have a life somewhere that I don't know about. And I think if you wanted to go to it, I wouldn't stop you. And if I don't have one?" He looked at her. "Then you have one here. If you want it." She didn't say anything to that. She turned and walked back to the cabin. He stood at the wash a long time before he followed. That night, she came into the kitchen while he was banking the fire. "Ezra." "Yes. My brother was the last family I had. The Apache man who hunted me. He was my brother's killer. He thought I had something he wanted. I did not. He stopped hunting me when the soldiers killed him in February. I learned this from a trader on the road last week." "You went into town?" "To the trading post. While you were in the field. I needed to know. And I am free, Ezra Hollis. I have no one looking for me. I have no place that I am running from. I have nowhere I have to go." He set the iron poker down slow. "That mean what I think it means?" She looked at him. Her eyes were dark and tired and not afraid of anything. "It means I am not staying because I have to. I am staying because I want to. If you want me." He stood there for a long moment. The fire cracked. The kettle hissed. The wind, soft now, moved against the window. "I want you," he said. She crossed the room. She put her hand on his chest, right over his heart. He covered her hand with his own. That was all. The next Christmas Eve, snow fell on the same cabin. Ezra was at the table with a kettle in his hand. The fire was going. Nalia was at the stove, stirring a pot of stew. She wore a wool dress now. Her hair was tied back with a leather cord. A knock came at the door. 3 hard blows. Ezra felt his whole body go still. Just for a second. Old instincts. Then he heard the voice. Hollis, it's Doyle. Just bringing your mail up before the storm hits. Ezra let out his breath. He looked at Nalia. She was already smiling. Just a little, just at the corner of her mouth. He went to the door. He pulled it open. The sheriff was on the porch with a small bundle of letters and a wrapped package. Town's been holding these for you. Figured I'd bring them up so you didn't have to ride down in this weather. That's good of you, Doyle. The sheriff peered past Ezra into the cabin. He saw Nalia. He didn't say anything about her. He hadn't said anything about her in 11 months. Not once. Ezra had wondered, sometimes, if Doyle knew the whole story all along. The way the man had shrugged that morning back in December. Like a man being overruled by a lieutenant he didn't trust. Doyle tipped his hat at Nalia. She tipped her head back. Merry Christmas, Hollis. Merry Christmas, Doyle. The sheriff rode off. Ezra closed the door. He bolted it out of habit. Then he laughed at himself for bolting it. Then he unbolted it. He turned around. Nalia had set 2 bowls of stew on the table. Sit down, she said, before it goes cold. He sat down. He looked across the table at her. He thought about the woman who had stood in the snow a year ago with a small bundle pressed to her chest and 3 words on her lips. She had said she needed shelter. What she had given him, in the end, was a house that felt like a home again. He picked up his spoon. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the fire kept burning. And for the first Christmas in 3 years, Ezra Hollis ate his evening meal across from someone who knew his name.